All right, let's get right into it. Today we're talking about a moment in time that didn't just change the world, it basically invented the world as we know it. We are talking about the agricultural revolution. This was, without a doubt, the most fundamental shift in how human beings live on this planet.
So, just think about this for a second. What was the one single transformation that made everything, and I mean everything we have today, cities, countries, technology, even the very screen you're looking at right now, possible? Well, the answer isn't some recent invention. It's a quiet, slow-burning revolution from thousands of years ago that completely rewired our entire destiny.
But to really get a feel for just how massive this change was, we have to go back, way back. We need to take a look at the world before farming to truly understand everything that we gained, and maybe everything we lost, too.
You know, for almost all of human history, we were hunter-gatherers. And seriously, you can just throw out that stereotypical image of a brutish caveman. This was an incredibly sophisticated way to live. People moved in small, family-like groups and had a knowledge of their environment that would just blow our minds today. Their diets were incredibly varied, changing with the seasons, and their societies, they were pretty equal, without the kinds of deep hierarchies we see later. But here's the absolute key. They lived by adapting to nature, not trying to control it.
And this right here, this chart really just lays it all out, side by side. It's like two different planets. Look at that shift. You go from being nomadic, always on the move, to sedentary, staying in one place. You go from small bands to these large, permanent villages, from a super diverse diet to a much more limited one. And maybe the most important change of all, from a pretty egalitarian world to one strictly defined by hierarchy. This contrast, this is the revolution in a nutshell. So what lit the fuse? What was the spark that sent humanity down this completely new road? You might think it was some brilliant invention or one person's great idea, but it wasn't. The real catalyst was a change in the planet itself. So, around 11,700 years ago, the last ice age finally ended. The massive glaciers retreated, and the world's climate began to stabilize. And this wasn't like a switch was flipped overnight. It was a slow, gradual warming that created brand new, lush ecosystems. It gave people the time and the stability to just watch, to observe, to experiment, and slowly, over thousands of years, to figure out how to manage the plants and animals they relied on. And what's so wild is that this wasn't a single light bulb moment that happened in one place. It's better to think of it like multiple independent sparks catching fire all around the globe. So for example, in the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East, people started domesticating staples we still eat today like wheat and barley, and they began herding sheep and goats.
But then, get this. At the same time, totally cut off from them, people in what is now China were figuring out how to cultivate rice and millet. And way over in New Guinea, a completely different system was popping up, based on root vegetables like taro and yams. The exact same pattern just repeats everywhere. In the Americas, it was maize, beans, and squash. In the Andes, potatoes and quinoa. And across parts of Africa, sorghum and millet. The big takeaway here isn't about memorizing the specific crops, it's the incredible fact that this happened independently all over the world. It was this global story of human creativity responding to a changing planet.
Okay, so what actually happens when we stop moving and start putting down roots? Well, planting seeds did a whole lot more than just change what we ate. It completely re-engineered human society right from the ground up.
The first massive change is a concept called sedentism. It's a fancy word for, well, staying put. Once you've got fields you need to tend, you can't just pack up and leave for months at a time. So, people started building permanent homes. Those homes grew into the first villages. And staying in one place also meant that families could get bigger, which led to an absolute explosion in the human population. And that ability to grow more food than you immediately need, that created a massive domino effect. For the first time in history, not everybody had to be focused on finding the next meal. This freed people up to do other things, to specialize. You could become a potter, a weaver, a priest, or a leader. And of course, once you have specialized jobs and stored wealth in the form of grain, well, social hierarchy is never far behind. This chain reaction literally built the blueprint for every complex society that followed. And this chart kind of gives you a snapshot of what that new society looked like. Sure, the vast majority of people were still farmers. That was the engine of everything. But now you have these other growing groups, artisans, leaders, organizers. This is the birth of the complex economies and social structures that define our world even today. Okay, but here's where the story gets a little more complicated. It's really crucial to understand that this is not some simple, happy tale of progress.
This new farming life came with a steep and, often, a pretty brutal price tag.
All of a sudden, people are packed together in crowded villages, which became perfect breeding grounds for diseases and epidemics. And ironically, even with more food, diets became less diverse. Relying on just a few staple crops often led to malnutrition. For the first time, deep, structural social inequality became a permanent fixture of life. And with land and stored food to protect, organized warfare became a bloody new reality. A lot of these problems, disease, inequality, conflict, are challenges we are very much still wrestling with today. So, if farming brought all these new problems, you've got to ask, why did it stick? Why did it spread? The simple answer is that, for all its faults, it was just powerful. The agricultural model could support much larger populations and far more complex societies. It laid the foundation for everything that came next. And by about 4000 BCE, after thousands of years of this new way of life spreading and developing, the results were just undeniable. The population growth, the food surpluses, the social structures that farming created, they were the necessary ingredients for the world's first cities, for the invention of writing to keep track of all that grain, and for the formation of the first states.
And ultimately, I think this quote just says it all perfectly. The agricultural revolution was the moment we went from a species shaped by nature to one increasingly capable of shaping nature. It was the fundamental turning point in our relationship with the entire planet.
So in the end, the agricultural revolution is what allowed us to become the architects of our own destiny. It's the reason we are all here, but it also kick-started some of our biggest challenges: inequality, environmental impact, large-scale conflict that we're still grappling with. And that leaves us with one last big thought. We got the power to build the modern world, but what kind of world did we actually build?